Alright, hello and welcome back. This is another episode of M3 UCH Modding Camp. This week is Lesson 5, Texturing with 3D Models and Exporting Them. I am your host, Jack Murphy, also known as Surge on most communities online. Alright, to begin, I'll go over the very basics and concepts of texturing with 3D models. There's two basic things that define a texture on a 3D object. Those two things are the image itself, that is the 2D image, which consists of just flat width, height, and color information, and then UV mapping. I'd like to remind you about UVs from last week's episode, well, 2 weeks ago, but the last lesson, where I discussed the basics of 3D modeling. I compared UVs to longitude and latitude. Let me open up SoftImage here really quick. Here we are. SoftImage is the 3D modeling program I am most comfortable using, and it is also the program I've been using for all my lessons in the past. There's a download link in the video for last episode if you do not have SoftImage mod tool. But yeah, this is the one. A lot of the terms I use will be standard for most 3D modeling packages, but more specifically I'll be using this package for all my examples. So I'm going to start off by creating a polygon mesh, because polygon meshes are what we use for game design. And we're going to be creating a sphere to just remind everyone, just kind of give a refresher course on U's and V's. We have sliders here to show different details. I can crank up how many U lines I have. U lines are considered longitude, which are the lines going up and down. So as I increase this slider, you can see the lines becoming more and more just increasing in detail in number. So U is longitude, up and down, and V is horizontal, left to right. As I increase this, we have more left to right or horizontal lines. So again, U, up and down, longitude, and V, left to right, latitude. These create this mesh, or this grid that we see. This grid defines how the texture is wrapped around our object, how it is what we call projected onto the object. So again, it's called a texture map. Think of it as a map that describes where on this geometry, where on this object, certain parts of the image will show up, how it is wrapped around, how it is projected. So again, just to recap, the two things that define a texture is the image itself and its UV mapping to the object. So I'm going to show you some examples of how exactly we do that. So go ahead, new scene. I'm going to start off with a simple cube. Primitive polygon mesh cube. Okay, let me turn on headlight and get some 3D going on here. There we go, so we can see it. And go ahead and we're going to do the very basics of starting off with a new texture. The module on the left here is on by default set to model. This is the model module. This is all the tools we use for actual modeling. But now for texturing, we want to go to the render module. You can do that by either clicking on the drop down menu here and going to render, or you can just use this shortcut key number 3 on your keyboard. So there we are, it switches to render. So what we're going to do to get our first texture is we're going to go down to the modify section here, texture, and add. Now there's lots of different options here for adding a texture, but what we're going to do is we're just going to do add an image. So wait a little while and the image property window should pop up here in just a moment. There we go. Alright, so here is the default image that XSI gives you if you haven't specified your own image file. Yeah, you might see this a lot if you forget to do something right on the texture or if it breaks itself. SoftImage XSI has a couple of bugs in it. One of them was one of the reasons is actually my second time recording this lesson. Got kind of caught up with an old one, or one of the other bugs, which is the texture wasn't updating properly, and unfortunately there's a lot of roadblocks you'll run into. I'm trying to cover a lot of them. I have in my notes. I tried thinking ahead of time of all the problems we might run into and how to work around them. But anyway, this image right here is the default, and again, you might be seeing this a lot, just to familiarize yourself with it so you won't be confused when you see it. So anyway, we'll go to image here. To get a new image to use as our texture, right here up at the top, new. New from file, and this will open up the XSI texture or file browser. you're going to want to navigate to wherever your texture file is. And when I say texture file, I mean the raw file. The file that you use in Photoshop or whatever image editing software that you use. Again, that's either .psd or .tga. The most common is .tga for what we use for the source engine. You just want to navigate to wherever that is. I suggest in one of my earlier lessons to create a material source folder inside your source SDK content directory. And so anyway, navigate to wherever you save your files. I save them inside source SDK content, material source, and for this example, modding camp. I'm going to use Ego Orb as a test. It was a texture we made a while back for a borked lesson that wasn't ever uploaded just because it flopped so hard. But yeah, here we are, Ego Orb. We're going to do this one. So it finally gets some use. That's good. So we see our image brought up here in the preview. And now, so that's the first step. That's the first half of what defines a texture, is the image itself. And now the second part is how this texture is actually going to be projected onto the object, or how it's going to be wrapped around. And that is defined by the texture projection down here. To create a new texture projection, go to New, and here we are. Here's our different list. I'm just going to go over some of the more common ones. There's planar XZ, planar YZ, and planar XZ. All the planars are the most simple way to project an image. Think of it as a movie projector in a theater. The same way that projector projects light and projects an image onto the silver screen in the movie theater is the same way that the planar projections project your image onto an object. It's simply just an image projected from a single direction onto a flat object. So I'm going to go ahead and do planar XY to show you what it does. Alright, so now we have the image and the projection. So now we see that our object here, our cube, has changed. When we look at it, we can't really see much. Ooh, but it is on there. I'm going to do something here really quick. I'm going to explain it here in a sec, just so we can have a better view of this texture. There we go. This is a cube with a planar projection on it. Our image is projected from a single direction. In this case, it seems like Softimage is still giving me problems. As you can see, I did a planar XY projection, which means it should be projected along from the XY plane. Let's take a look at what the XY plane is. It should have projected onto this side. As you can see, X is going left to right and Y is going up and down, meaning that this view that we're looking at we're looking at the XY plane. So this image should have been projected onto this side of the cube. But Softimage, being the little pain that it is, projected it from an XZ projection. So again, if you're watching, the only reason I point that out is if you're paying attention, you'll notice that that is a contradiction, that I did a planar XY projection and yet it's appearing from the XZ plane. Yes, that is a problem. Unfortunately, I don't really know how to work around that. I think it's just a bug with Softimage right now. I believe if I export this into the game, it will show up correctly. It's just for some reason, I think it might be my laptop, just the fact that I don't have a dedicated graphics card, that I get a lot of graphical issues whenever I work with Softimage. So unfortunately, I don't have my desktop computer with me, so in the meantime, we're just going to have to deal with these, I guess, inaccuracies here. But yeah, I could use Saber's computer, but I'd have to install everything, and we're already rolling, so let's just go with it. I'm not going to start this recording over a second time, or a third, I should say. So anyway, that's our first one. Planar projections, fairly simple. Let's see if I can try this better on just a grid. Yeah, let's just get a grid here instead of a cube. Here's our grid. Texture, add an image. Let's do a new image. New from file. Let's do neon gas. That was another one I did for an older lesson. New, planar XZ. This is the one that would be a top-down view. Let's see if it works correctly. Alright, there we go. So there's our image projected onto this, and now we can rotate it, and there we are. So we have that, and that's again our most simple of projections. Oh, it looks like our cube fixed itself. Once I created a grid, I guess the grid, you know, showed it how to do it right, and it took a lesson from that, and now it's fixed itself. Hooray! Okay, so anyway, those are the most simple projections. So let's go something a little bit more complex, like let's say a cylinder. Let's get rid of this. Primitive, polygon mesh, a cylinder. I think it's inside our box here. Let me move it out of there. There we are. Let me simplify it a little bit. Okay, make it a little bit bigger there so we can see it better. There's our cylinder. So here we have basically just a tube, a cylinder. So I'm going to go texture, add an image. I'm going to use Ego Orb again for this one. New. And I'm just, for the sake of showing the differences, I'm going to show you what planar XY would look like on this. It looks good head on, right? But as we turn, it starts stretching. Here, let me try and give you a good example of this. Well, that projected all right, to tell you the truth. But, let's see, I'm trying to... Maybe I'll use the default XSI texture, because that's in a grid, and if we have it in a nice grid, you will be able to see the stretch and distortion a lot better. So texture, add image, I'm just going to use the default one, new, let's do planar XY again. Okay, here we go. As you can see, when we look at it head on, it's very tight and compact. But as we go to the side, the grid starts to stretch out. That's because, again, this image is being projected from a single direction like this. So it looks good when on all the faces, all the parts of the tube here, or the cylinder, that are head on with the projection. But as we get closer to the edges, there starts to be an angle here. It curves. So as it curves, the texture isn't being projected straight on, and that's what gives you that stretch. So I'll show you how to create a better projection that'll wrap around your cylinder nicely. So we'll choose the cylinder, we'll do texture, add an image again, and this time I am going to use, I'll stick with a grid this time. I'll do new, and we'll want to do cylindrical. Cylindrical will automatically, it'll look at your shape and it'll find out which way it's rotating, which way it's curving around if it's a cylinder. And it'll automatically wrap your image around nicely so that way you don't get any warps. So I'll click cylindrical, and there we go. So now if I rotate around this object, you see that there's no warping on the grid. It remains the same size all the way around. And it loops nicely too. So I'm going to change the image to Ego Orb so we can see that. So there we are. Now we see this image wraps around nicely, perfectly, actually. I'll rotate this cylinder around so we can see it from all angles here. Yep, wraps all the way around. So there we go. So that's cylindrical. And I'll just kind of go over some of the other ones. And spherical is used for if you're trying to wrap something around a ball, like a globe or something. And then the last one, which is the most important, I think, in my regards, or at least the most used, is unique UVs. Unique UVs sort of, the computer goes ahead and automatically figures out what's the most efficient way to divide up your model. Like I said, another way to think about putting a texture onto an object isn't just like I said, there's the theater projector example, which is good for flat images. But when it comes to rounded objects or very complex geometry, very complex models, the best way to think about it is as cutting the skin off of an orange and laying it out flat. Sort of like how you see images of the globe, like planet Earth. Let me see if I can pull up a good example here. One moment. Oh yeah, I wanted to bring this up. I believe our user Venom on the Steam group, he created this. This is his very first model. So awesome, great job. I really like it. Yeah, I hope to see more from you. I can't wait to see this in game. But yeah, you have a very good start, and awesome. It's good to see that the first lesson turned out well. So again, this is Venom's very first model. Good job. So I'm gonna just try and do a Google search here for, let's see, Earth map. Okay, I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's sort of the weird chopped up, it's like made of ovals. Yeah, here we are. This is sort of what the Earth's map would look like. Obviously, if you took a globe and you cut it, if you thought of the Earth's surface as the skin of an orange and you cut it off, this is how you would lay it out flat. That's how it would look like. So this is sort of what the computer would do. It looks at your object and it thinks of the best way to basically dissect your model and lay it out flat, so that way you can apply a texture to it. It doesn't work that well, and you have to do a lot of manual tweaking by hand, but we'll go over that in a future detailed lesson. But for the meantime, we're just gonna go over the basics. So anyway, let's get rid of these objects. I created a very special object, a very special model for us to use as a demonstration. In a very special demonstration here for this class. It's misleading. How so? Okay. So here we are, our texture example model. I'm gonna open it up. And I can save. Boom, here we are. Okay. Ta-da! So this weird mess of a thing is what I thought would be the best example to sort of demonstrate all the different techniques of applying a texture in one simple model. So, yeah, one ugly mess here. So this guy here, he has all sorts of things. He has flat sides, he has a cylinder, and he has a very complex mesh. Well, very complex. A somewhat complex head mesh here. So I'm going to show you all the different modeling techniques or texturing techniques so that we can apply textures to all these different sides in different ways. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split them up into two different models, because I have two textures in mind we're going to use on him. One is going to be his main texture, and the second one is going to be a separate special texture just for his Mohawk here. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just select the faces that make up his Mohawk. With those selected, I'm going to make a duplicate of him. I'm going to delete, well, I'm going to have one version of him with no Mohawk, and then the other version, everything but the Mohawk, or nothing but the Mohawk. So there we go. Again, if you were a little confused by what I just did, don't worry about it. That was just that was all stuff I covered in the last lesson about how to select faces, delete them, how to duplicate objects. So anyway, now we have two separate parts. We have the Mohawk and the actual body as two separate meshes. So now we can apply the texture. We can apply two different textures: a texture for the body and a texture for the hair. Anyway, I'm going to start off with the body. I'm going to select it. Again, I'm going to hit 3 to go to the render module. Modify, texture, add image. And I'm going to go down to our image here, new from file, and I call it the projectionator. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And yeah, that's what we're going to work with. We're going to click texture projection, new, and I'm going to do unique UVs. Again, this is what I always use to start as a base for applying textures to everything. It's going to look at the model, and it's going to chop it up as best as it can and lay it out flat. There we are, unique UVs, and blah, there's our big mess. But hey, it's got the texture, right? Good. Now let's start defining how it gets projected. Again, we're going to be using a UV mesh, U and V's, these lines we discussed before, and they're going to help us lay out this texture the way we want it. So we're going to start off by looking at the texture editor. Right here, what I'm going to do is you can either change one of these viewports to the texture editor by going right, by clicking on the type here. We have top, front, right, camera. So I'm going to click on right here, and I'm going to go down, I'm going to choose texture editor. Now this makes it become the texture editor. I'm going to full screen this one by hitting F12. All my mouse is over this, F12. Now we can see all the polygons of our model. As you can see, the computer has gone ahead and it has cut it up and it's laid it out flat as best as it can. So it's not great, but hey, you know, we can't blame it for trying. And anyway, let me show you. This is what we're looking at here in the texture editor. This is the UV map. These lines, or these polygons, show, or like, here, let me just show you. Like this eye here, this eyeball that I made is currently, as you can see, inside this box, this square. That square is one of the sides of our mesh. So let me go ahead and find that side. Here we are. To start manipulating, what I can do is I can go inside the texture editor and I can use the same shortcut keys that we use for selecting points and edges in the 3D view. That is T. T's to select points, and E is to select edges. Yeah, E is to select edges in texture editor. So once we have those selected, I can start using the, we have the same sort of transformation tools as we did in modeling. We have transform, which slides things around, which I'll show you right here. We have rotate, which rotates things. And we have scale, which scales things. And again, those shortcut keys are X for scale, C for rotate, and V for translate. And that's how we manipulate our polygons on here. So let me show you what exactly happens when we modify it like this. Just so we have a better view, I'm going to full screen this, and you can also hit Alt and 8 to open up a separate window. You can choose the object you want to modify. Right here we have the Mohawk, but I want to choose the body right here. And then you go up to Viewer and choose Texture Editor. So now we're viewing the texture editor of our object. So here we are. Now I can see the effects in real time as I manipulate things in the texture editor. I can also select entire polygons by hitting U. U is to select polygons by themselves. So if I go ahead and I choose, let's say, I can hit U and just select this face, this polygon on my object in 3D. If we go to the texture editor, it is now selected in the texture editor. So when I translate, only that texture, or only that polygon moves. And as you can see, as I move this around in the texture editor, you can see how it how it affects the model. So if I move this polygon into this candy cane texture over here, now that polygon has that candy cane texture. So I hope that this will sort of help, I guess, fill in any questions you may have had. I mean, so far all we've been talking about have been kind of abstract concepts, and now you actually get to see how it works. So again, what you can do is you can either select points in the texture editor by hand using T for polygons. And one moment. For some reason, it's not letting me select singular. Let's see here. Yeah, whenever I select one polygon, it selects everything in that island. I don't want that. There we go. Okay, it looks like it's this right here. Island. Think of these as little islands. So if I select one part of that island, the whole island's selected. I don't really want that, so I'm going to turn this off right here. Island. So now with that off, I can select individual points, such as just this, such as just this point here, just that corner. So let's see what happens when I click and drag that or translate it. Whoa, some serious distortion going on there. So anyway, let me undo that. Okay, so there we are. Let me take a look at my notes, see what I should be going on to next here. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the more useful more useful techniques here. So we have our texture applied to our object. We have our texture editor open. Again, you hit Alt-8 to open up what's called the XSI Explorer. If you hit 8 by itself, you open up the Explorer, and it allows you to... Basically, it's a list of everything that's in your scene. Right now, we have the camera, the default light that's placed here, and our 2 polygon meshes. The Mohawk, which I can hit F2 and rename, so we don't get confused. Mohawk, and I'll call this one the body. So we have our body and our Mohawk. So anyway, that's just the normal Explorer by hitting 8. If you hit Alt-8, you open up this special version of the Explorer. You have your items listed here on the left, but then you also have a window which you can use to, like, I'll go to Viewer, Object View, so this way I can view the object singularly, but there's lots of different things, but anyway, I just want the texture editor. So now we can have the texture editor open up here off to the side and be able to see our 3D object at the same time, so we can see how our changes in the texture editor are affecting the object in real time. So let's start off with his bottom here. I was going to give the candy cane texture to the whole bottom here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit U, and I'm going to select all the faces here that make up his bottom. Even the underside here, and let's do up here. I'm going to do the bottom side first, or second actually. Let's start with the front. Here we are, we're going to have the front of him, his chest area. I created a special thing for that. What you do is when you select a face, you can see it, like I said, it is selected up here in the texture editor. Should be anyway, come on. Let me close this, maybe I have to just reopen it. Alt-8. There we go. So now I can move this around. There we are. Again, what I did is I hit U to open up the face selector, so I can choose different faces on the polygon. And I selected the face I want to work with, which is going to be his chest area here. And now inside our texture editor, let me make this a bit bigger here so we can see what's going on. There we go. I hit spacebar to go to the object selection, so that way it gets rid of this red tint that shows it's selected, so that way we can see our changes better. But anyway, as we see here. Also, I'm moving around by using the S key. It's sort of the same way you move around in the 3D view. You hold down S and you either left click to translate, or you use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So anyway, hit V to translate, and I can move this around our selection. We can see it change in real time. So anyway, I have some pecs and abs up here, but I want to have this polygon separate from the rest of it. As you see, I move this polygon around, but it's attached to these bottom polygons here. So as I move that, not only am I affecting the texture up here, as I'm dragging it, I'm also affecting the textures down here, because they're connected, as we can see here. So there's a tool for that called tearing. You go up to Tools, and where is it? Oh, here it is. Sorry, Selection. Tearing mode. If you click that and make sure it's on, when you click and drag something, it basically tears it off from the other polygons around it. So now when I move this around, I no longer affect the polygons down here, which is very helpful. So anyway, I can go ahead and I can rotate this and expand it so that way, there we are, our pecs and abs fit nicely on there. This is really cluttered right now. There's too much stuff on here. So if you want to only see what you have selected, right here, the S, Show Selected, click that, and now everything, only the things that you have selected, only the objects that only the components of your model that you have selected will be shown. If you hit H, it means everything but what you have selected, and A means all. So it'll show all of them. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to select the front here. I'm going to hit the S for show only selected. There, and now everything's cleared out. Now at my own leisure, I can go ahead and I can arrange it. There we go. And now we're going to do the sides. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose this side here. And I have a special texture for his arm. I selected it. I'm going to go ahead and click S here to hide everything but what I have selected. So now we can see it. So now I can go ahead and I can try manipulating it over here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as you can see, it's a little bit skewed. It's not exactly a perfect square. It's slanted a little here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, here, I guess I have to bring this out a bit. Actually, let's see. Maybe if I shrink this down. There we go. That's a perfect size. These tools here are a quick way to add projection properties or projection types to singular objects. Before I was showing you how to do texture projection to the entire object, back when I was showing you how to do it with the cube, the grid, and the cylinder. So this is going to show us how to do it with just whatever we have selected. So I have this selected side, and I'm going to do, right here we have planar, cylindrical, spherical, cubic, and some other things here. But anyway, we're going to do planar. So click on that, and then you can choose the different type. So you have X, Y, YZ, and XZ. You have both in reference to the object's rotation or the world. So this is just determine where it's going to come from. Or you can do best fit, which basically the computer looks at it and it thinks which is going to be the best side to project from. Best fit is usually the best choice for you, because what the computer will do is it'll determine that this side is flat, and it knows that when it projects the texture to project it from this side. Not from over here, not from up above, but from the side where it's straight on with the polygon here. So we're going to go ahead and click that, best fit, and there. It automatically realigns our object so that it's nice and flat. It's aligned the best way to it. So now that we have a perfect square, it's a lot easier to resize and move into position. So now we're going to position it, there we go, so that our arm is there. Ta-da! Again, just kind of showing you, if I put it over here, we got the abs and stuff, so we want to put it over the arm. There we go. And now let's do it to the other side. Get rid of this creepy eye thing that we got going on here. Just like that. Again, we only want to... I lost those tools now. We have to resize this again. Okay, here we go. Click up here, show selected. There we go. Again, I'm going to planar best fit this, and then I'm going to resize it down to the arm. But now our arm's facing the wrong way. So what we have to do is we can't rotate it. Whoa. We can't rotate it, because if we do, then the arm's going to be upside down. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale it, and you can, if you left click, you scale it in both width and height. But if you right click, you can scale it in only width, and if you click in the mouse button, you can scale it in only height. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep the height the same. We're going to scale it in width. So if I shrink it down, watch this. I invert it. There, now it's facing the other way. So again, it's just, if you scale it down so much, it flips. See how that works? Flips. There you are. It's all just kind of something that you have to work with, and then sort of as you work with it, it just sort of grows on you, and you'll start to understand it better. But in the meantime, that's how you do that. It's another useful texturing trick. Now we just want the rest of him. The rest of his top here, I just want the skin texture. I don't want any of these details, the eye, the mouth, none of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to select some parts on his head here. And I'm going to tell it to grow selection. I discussed this in the last lesson here. There we go. Whoa, too much. So it looks like we have all the parts selected of his head. So I'm going to go ahead and show only the selected. There we are. Here's all the parts that make up his head. And I'm going to scale it down so it's super tiny. And I'm just going to make sure that it's over here in some of the just bland, skin texture area. So there we go. So now his head, the upper part here, doesn't have any details. Before we start working on the head, let's start working on the body. Let's do that candy cane thing already. So now that we've shown how to do that... Oh, wait a minute. We got to fix his back, too. Forgot about that. That, again, just shrink it. Let's put it over there. Alright, his bottom part of the body here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select all the faces that make up his bottom here. Bottom portion of his body. There we go. And now again, this is sort of a cylinder shape or a tube. So what I'm going to do is up here, we were using the planar one for his top body, which just had flat sides, but since this is again a cylindrical shaped object, we're going to click cylindrical here. And then let's try best fit and see what it gives us. Unfortunately, not a very good result. So what we're going to do is we're going to try that again. Cylindrical. And we're going to go ahead and do, let's see here. Let's try, let's just go through here and find out which one works best. So cylindrical, and let's just try XY, world aligned. There we are, that's great. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this one. Don't need that. Come on. Now we see here in the texture editor, it's been laid out nice and in a nice flat, easy to understand concept here. Now, looks like it's giving me some grief here. Looks like it's not updating properly. It was doing this before when I was testing this out. How to fix it? I think you just have to go to clips. None. What do you mean none? Okay, hold on a minute. Okay, I'm gonna have to close out of that one for right now. Again, I believe the main reason I'm having these technical difficulties right now is because I don't have a dedicated graphics card. Hopefully you won't experience any of this, but let's try and find a workaround just in case. Inside our texture editor, if you're seeing the wrong image being projected onto your object, like you gave it a texture but for some reason it's showing up like that, the default one, usually what you have to do is up here in the texture editor, up near the top you see clips, and then the projector, and then you can choose whatever texture you're actually using. There we go, so I switched it back. That didn't fix it. Maybe I have to just switch the rendering type. Let me switch to shaded. No, let me switch to textured. Okay, let me change to wireframe. Change back to real-time shaders. Okay, yeah, it's working now. Okay, so I had to mess around with these settings. I had to switch it back to OpenGL. So nothing actually changed as far as the texture goes. The only thing that really changed was, again, like I said, just some glitches with soft image because I don't have a graphics card. But anyway, let's go back to our texture editor. Alt-8. Here we go. So now I can work on aligning this so that... Let me just show only what we want. There we go. Make this a little bigger, please. Okay, there we are. So this is what we only have selected. It's been laid out. So now I can shrink it like that. I want it as tall as possible. And I want it skinnier enough so it fits in there. There we go. Now let's see how it wraps. Okay, pretty good. The only problem is that, as we can see here, it doesn't line up exactly, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak it by widening it a little. There we go. See, if I widen it too much, whoa, we split. So let's scale it down. Scale it down. There. Oh, that's perfect. And there we go. So it stitches seamlessly. So now we have this nice little candy cane texture down at the bottom. We have up here at the top. And now we're going to use, now we're going to start adding details to his head. Let's start with the mouth. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the polygons here. There we go. Let's see what they look like. Show what we have selected. Okay, right now, they look like that. That's horrible. How are we supposed to place those, you know, where they are right now? That's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be a big pain in the butt. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, use our planar projection tool here, and we're going to do best fit. There we go, and the computer did a very good job of projecting the texture straight onto the polygons here. So now that we have a start, we can now move it down to the mouth, and now we can shrink it. There we go, and as we shrink it, it fits around the mouth better, and it projects nicely. There, it looks pretty good. The only problem is that this edge goes into the candy cane texture, so I'm going to hit T to select points, and I'm only going to select this little edge here, and or this little point, and I'm going to slide it over to the side, so that way we don't have that candy cane texture on there. And there we go. We look at it, and voila, we have our mouth. Again, we took these textures, or these polygons here, and we told the program to project them in a planar fashion, which means straight on, and we told it to do best fit, and it gave us this size for us. It gave us this shape, which worked out great. So I already created some for nostrils, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the nose here, selecting the nose from the polygon, and again I'm going to go planar, best fit. There. Show only. So now we have our shape there. I'm going to rotate it. If you hold shift, it helps snap the rotation. If you hold shift and rotate, it snaps to like 15-degree increments, I think. So there we go. Have it straight up. Let's scale it down. Let's just line up one nostril for now. You know what? That's not exactly gonna. Yeah, there we go. Let's just get one nostril on there. Okay, there we go. That's good. Now let's get that other one. Let's select this one by itself. And since we have tearing on, if I move this, it tears away from that one. So now I can modify, whoa. So now I can modify this one by itself. And let's try and line this up a little bit better. There we go. It isn't pretty, but there are two nostrils. Good. Now let's give this guy some crazy eyes. Well, these polygons right here seem to be the best for eyes. So I'm just going to select one at a time. Okay, planar best fit. There we are. Let's hide, and now let's scale this down. Let's put it over our eye there. Now you'll notice that if it goes off the edge, you'll notice that this the texture projection, the polygon goes off the edge of the texture. If that happens, it starts looping. Like you'll notice over here, it goes off the left side. So if it goes off the left side, it's going to loop over on the right. So it's going to come over here. So here we have the candy cane texture. We can see it right here. There's the eye, and as we can see, the part that goes off the image begins, if it goes off the left side, it's going to start coming back on the right side where our candy cane image is. So I'm going to take this polygon and I'm going to scale it and rotate it so that way it fits nicely on the image and doesn't fall off, so we don't get any weird stuff like that. It's going to be a little hard to do. Again, I wasn't really looking for top quality here when I made this image. That actually looks kind of funny having it cut off like that. But yeah, anyway, there we go. It doesn't fit. It goes off the edge a little bit, but it's okay because we don't have... It goes off the bottom, which means it's going to start back up on the top. And the top is the same color, so we don't have any looping issues. So anyway, there's our first eye. And now I'm going to have another one right here. Select that other polygon. Again, planar, best fit. So it slaps it on there straight on. Goes down. And let's see. Oh yeah, we're going to have it for the other eye. There they are. Oh wait, hold on, looks like we have a little bit of a looping issue there. There, wait, almost. There, okay. Make it a little bit smaller. Rotate it a little bit. There we go. Okay. So now we got our eyes, and now let's give him that sweet mother tat right here on the side of his face. He's a badass like that. And select all the things we want. Planar, best fit. Okay, let's clear this up. Click show only selected. Let's position this over the tattoo. scale it down so that it fits better. I'm going to have to just tweak these points a little bit. It's going to stretch the tattoo a little bit on his head, but it's the only way it's really going to fit. And there we go. It's not really oriented very well, but if we rotate it, there we go. Let's try this some more. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Let's see if we can make it fit nicer. Let's see. Let's move that over. Again, just kind of tweaking these points here so that way it doesn't go off the image. We don't have any looping issues. And there we go. So there he's got his tattoo on the side. And I think that's it for his body. The last bit here is the Mohawk, which we'll be going into. Let's see here. We have his Mohawk selected. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to close the texture editor right now. And I'm going to do texture, add image. Bring this down. Okay, we don't have the Mohawk yet, so we want new image, Mohawk. There we are, new. And I'm going to again do unique UVs. Good starting point. So anyway, here we go. All these little green wireframes, or these green lines that you see, are what's called, those are the texture projections. As you see, we have one here for the mouth, two here for the eyes, one there, one there. We should have two here for the nose, and another one here for the tattoo. And this cylindrical one, which defines his bottom, how we did a cylindrical wrap around him. Okay. So anyway, let's start working on his Mohawk here. Let's look at this in a texture editor. Alt 8, open that up. Okay, here we go. We have his texture editor open. Okay. You know, this could be a little bit bigger. Let's move this over. There we go, so we can see what we're doing. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose the top part of his hair. And I'm going to tell it to do a cylindrical wrap because it kind of curves, doesn't it? So, oh, we lost our tools again. Okay. Okay, here we are. Cylindrical projection, best fit. Alright, let's see how it did. Fairly good. Looks pretty good, although it looks like it split it up into two different parts, two different islands. So what we're going to do here is we're going to merge them. So I told you how you can tear different polygons apart from each other, like that, but now I'm going to show you how to weld them together. We're going to go ahead and we're going to select this island, and when you have an island selected, you notice how it has these little glowing sides here. There's a yellow side and a green side. What those glowing lines mean is it basically shows you where it syncs up with the other islands. So this green edge and this green edge go together. So if we move this over here and we line up these two green glowing edges, it means that they'll stitch together on your model. It means this edge and this edge are the same edge on your 3D model. It's just they've been split apart, so now they're separated from one another. So if I move this here, I move that in, that's good. They're close, so now what I do is I select the two I want to merge. So I select these 2 points, and what you do is you hit the asterisk key on your keyboard, and that will merge them. So now they're one single point. And same thing with these 2 points. I'll select these 2 points, and I'll hit asterisk, and boom, they get sealed together. There's different ways to do that. If you want to align things, basically, here I'll select all the points up here at the top, and I'll hit shift and underscore. What that'll do is here, these buttons up here are basically what I'm doing. These are sort of like squishing. You see how this icon looks like 2 arrows, like squishing this dot into a line horizontally? What you do is you click that, and basically it flattens everything on a horizontal line. if I clicked this one, it squishes everything sideways into a vertical line, like that. And this one squishes them in both width and height, so it makes them all into one singular point. So I'm going to undo all that. That's good if you want to like make your texture nice and straight. Like you notice how this texture here I have, it's pretty rectangular, it's straight, it goes left to right, up and down. So what I want to do here, first off, let's just do show. Let's get rid of all these other polygons. We don't want all those. There we go. I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to select, I guess all the polygons are going to come back once I start selecting points. But anyway, I'm going to just select the top points here. And I'm going to click this button to make them a horizontal line. And again, the shortcut for that is Shift and underscore. So there you go. So now we have these lines nice and flat that way. And now you notice these lines are a little skewed. They're kind of crooked there. So let's go ahead and let's make these straight up and down lines. So I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to hit this button, this two, that button. Again, the shortcut key is Shift and backslash. So Shift backslash, select these two, Shift backslash, and this one, Shift backslash. There, so now we've made the top of our Mohawk nice and even. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to place it over that. There we go, so now we can see it on there. I can make it bigger to change how the texture looks. And again, the texture wraps, so I don't have to worry about this going off the texture there, because it's just going to repeat over and over again. It looks good. But anyway, I'm going to modify this to a size that I think looks good. I think that looks a little too pixelated, so let's make this a bit bigger. There we go, that should be fine. And now we're going to work on the sides of his head. As you can see here, I have these straight vertical lines, which will be used for the side of his hair. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select these. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reposition these a little bit to make them easier to work with. We're going to use those techniques of aligning points, both horizontally and vertically, to make this look a little bit better, not as stretched out on his model. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select all the bottom ones, Shift underscore to flatten them out, and select the top one, Shift underscore, and now I'm going to go ahead and do all the up and down, the vertical lines. And I'm using Shift backslash to make them line up nice and vertical. Alright, you know what, I'm going to go ahead, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to shrink it down, and we're going to move it over these vertical lines there. Okay, maybe that's a little too intense for him. What we could also do is, anyway, maybe that's not the best way to line up his thing. Let's see, what was it at originally? Let's just keep it at its original shape. Maybe that's the best for it. Because again, that shape is what the computer automatically determined would be its best shape to go at without being super distorted. Let's see how that looks. Let's move that down, let's scale it quite small. Still not the best, but it'll work. Look better than it did before anyway. So let's go ahead, let's choose the side here. And let's move that down, let's scale it. And there we go. And the front there, we're going to do planar, best fit. And we're going to rotate it a little, so that way it, whoa. Maybe not. Let's just keep it, let's shrink it down. There we go, have it there. Got the side, front going out. All that's left is the back part of his Mohawk. There we go, let's select that. Okay, only want to show that selected. Planar, best fit. Shrink them down, put them down there. And there we go. Alright. Now if all these texture projection, all these texture control objects are starting to get in the way, what we can do is we can freeze the object. And that will basically, it'll freeze all, it'll solidify all the texture projections that we did. So let me collapse this so that way we can see the freeze button down here. Click that freeze and give it a little bit. There, all the little green texture projections have disappeared. Let's do that to the Mohawk freeze. There they go, they're gone. So now this texture is now solidified to where it is. We can still go ahead and modify it inside a texture editor. You can still go ahead and modify your image as you need to, but you won't see those green guides anymore. Those are gone, they're baked into your model, you don't need to worry about it. Again, when I say it's kind of a more advanced lesson to try and explain why freezing removes those green objects. But I guess for the meantime, all you gotta know is that if your model starts feeling too cluttered, hit freeze, and that'll help your program run better because there's less stuff in the memory, and it'll also get rid of those guides, so it'll clear up your view a bit. So here we are. He's completely modeled and textured, and there we go. So we just textured a model. Yeah, I hope that wasn't too convoluted and stuff. It's probably all over the place, kind of a little weird. But anyway, let's get into... Yeah, that was the basics of texturing. From that, you can basically texture just about anything. You have your texture projections, so that's how you get started. You'll be able to start with nothing and be able to say, okay, I think this would be best. Like, this is a pretty flat area. I'll project it planar style on there. This is cylindrical. I'll use a cylindrical projection. And that's basically how you'll decide how to do things. And then you know how to select individual components and how to project them and then manipulate them into place on your texture, on your image. And you've also learned how to tear polygons away from other polygons. And you also learned how to... one moment. Yeah, and you also learned... Yeah, so you learned how to tear them away. Come on. You learned how to select tearing mode. I guess it wasn't on. You learned how to tear polygons away, and you also learned how to put them back by selecting them and hitting asterisk. Or, like I said, this button up here. One goes horizontally, squishes them flat horizontally, the other one squishes them flat vertically, and this one squishes them flat in all directions. Or, in other words, it fuses them together. So, select and fuse. So now that you know how to tear apart and fuse and realign things on your image and how to use the projection tools for specific things, for specific polygons, you can basically texture, that's basically all the texturing tools you'll need. So that covers our texturing portion of this lesson. Now we're going to get into actually putting your model into the game. A lot of you may have skipped the texturing portion. Again, it's kind of a lot to take in at one point. It's best to just kind of experiment around and learn how to do it yourself. Just get your hands dirty, and eventually you'll learn how it works. And it's all just sort of getting your head wrapped around it. And once that's done, it becomes fairly simple, not too hard. But it is, yeah, it's the final step after you've modeled your 3D. After you've modeled your prop, texturing would be the next part. So let's get into exporting. Actually, let me just check my notes really quick. I've been kind of doing it all on the fly, so let me see if I've overlooked anything here. Nope, not really. Okay, so we're going to go into exporting. This is the fun part where we actually get to see our object in the game. To export, you're going to need an add-on for SoftImage called the Valve Source add-on. It doesn't normally come with the SoftImage program, so you have to find it. I have a link. It's included in the video description below. It's at moddb.com, and you download that. And I believe it's been a while since I've installed it, and I haven't. I guess I haven't tried redoing it. I basically I looked up how to do it again. So here's basically how I'd say you do it. You download it, and I think it downloads as a zip. Actually, no, I just downloaded it earlier just to test it. So let's see here. Downloads. Yep, Valve Source. It saves it as a zip file, and the file itself is called a Valve Source XSI add-on. So you'll want to extract that wherever you want. I'd recommend extracting it into the soft image file, because here, one moment, let me just check. I'm pretty sure soft image has a folder. Yeah, here are soft image mod tool, and then here add-ons. They have an add-ons folder. I usually put it in there. See, here it is already. So Valve Source add-on, you put that in there, but you're not done. Once the add-on is extracted to someplace on your computer, you need to go to File, Add-on, Install, and then you browse for it. You see file name up here, you see these 3 dots, you click on that, and then that's how you can browse to it. So go up to C drive, soft image mod tool, add-ons, whoa, and there it is, the Valve Source. Then you hit OK. But I've already installed it, so I think after you do that, you just hit, yeah, after you do that, let's, here, sorry. I didn't proceed because I thought it'd actually start installing. So we do that, add-ons, and you select your add-on. There it is, and then you click install. And that should be it. You might have to close out of soft image before you can use it. Like, close out of soft image and reload. So then after that's done, you should see the Valve Source up here at the top. So very good. Now, before we go ahead and export, something I should mention is that it's a very good idea that when you export your model for use in the game, that it only consists of one polygon mesh. Right now we see this polygon mesh consists of 2, the body and the Mohawk. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to merge these together to make one model. So I'm going to select both of them, select that one, and I'm going to hit 1 to go back to the model module here. Give it a little bit. Okay, there we are. And we're going to modify, oh wait, no, model, okay, there it is, create. Took a little while to update there. Model, create, polymesh, and merge. So we're going to create a new polymesh by merging 2 separate ones. There we are. This tolerance meter here shows how close points need to be for them to merge to one another. Like if I turn this down, you see how this line turns blue, meaning that it's a border line, means that these edges aren't connected. So if I turn this up, it turns white, which means that these points have snapped together. That's a more advanced topic, and I'll go into that later. But anyway, here we go. So that's that. You'll notice that it's flickering like that. It's because right now we have 3 models. We have the body model, the Mohawk model, and then we have the new model that is the 2 of them combined. And they're right on top of each other. Let me move this off to the side here so we can see it better. There we go. They're stopped clashing. So this is the new model we created from the merge. But all of our textures are gone. Oh crap. Don't worry. Right down here, materials, UVs, vertex colors, all that stuff, you want to click merge. What that'll do is it'll copy all the data from this one, from these 2 models onto your new one. So click merge. There, all the UV map, all the vertex data, all the texturing that we did on this model has now been taken over to that one. There we go. And now what do we do about this leftover one? Basically, what you can do is you can either hide it, but we don't want that because when we're exporting, we only want one object. So just hit delete. So this will delete the parent right here. The 2 objects we used to create this new one, it'll delete that, and it'll just leave this one behind. So there we go. We've taken our 2 objects and we've merged them into one. Now another thing before we export is you have to think about where your model is in your scene. Down here, at the very center of your grid is 0.000. It's the very center of your scene. When you create an entity in Hammer, you create a prop entity. That prop entity, if you put it on the floor, basically your point entity is this very center, the origin, 000. So if you put your object, if I put this character right here, he's up in the sky. If this model is above the center of the scene, when I go to put the object in the game, when I place my prop entity, or my prop static entity in the map, if I put that entity on the floor, so it's right on the floor, and I tell it to do this model will be hovering over the floor, like how it's hovering over the center of the grid right now. So I'll need to move it down. So when you make a model, it's best to have it line up exactly the way you want it to look in your map. Like, I don't want this to hover, I want this to stand perfectly on the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up with the floor in my scene, or the grid. I'll go to a side view here so we can see better, and I'm going to move it down so that way it touches the ground there. There. So now when I put it in the map, it'll snap to the ground. If, like, let's say this was a chandelier or something, you know, one of the most ugly chandeliers in the world, I'd flip this upside down, let's just say, and I'd want it to be underneath the origin. I want it to be below 0.000, because most likely I'm going to be putting the prop static entity in hammer, I'm going to put it on the ceiling. So that way when I put it on the ceiling, it'll line up with the ceiling really nice. If I have any space in between like that, when I put it on the ceiling, there's going to be a gap there between the chandelier and the ceiling. So again, just line up your model the way you want. If this was to say like maybe a wall lamp, I'd have it in the middle and on the side. Anyway, these are all different examples. Just line up your model the way you're going to want it to look inside Hammer, where you're going to want it aligned in relation to the floor or wherever the entity is. So there we go. Again, this is going to be sort of like a statue. It's just going to be standing there. So I want it lined up with the ground. And now what you also have to do is you have to freeze your object. So when I say freeze, what this basically does is you'll notice here that when I have this object selected, right here on the transform menu, it says Y. The Y transformation is -237, and the Z transformation is 0.2 blah blah blah. So what's happening is, if I export it the way it is now, it's not going to be there. Like, let me give you an example. I'll move this over here, and I'm going to freeze it. Freeze. You have to freeze it in two different ways. You have to freeze here, which basically freezes all. It's sort of like the undo history of your model. When you make changes to your model, it remembers every change you make. So when you click freeze, it forgets all those changes, and it solidifies it. It stays the way it is, but it clears its memory out. And second, you want transform. Click up here, transform, and then freeze. Where is it? Freeze all transforms. So now all of our X, Y, and Z have now become 0. So according to the scene, this model, this is its natural state, is right here, off to the right-hand side of the center. So if I move him back and I export, we're going to have a problem because his Z is at -23. The modeling software still thinks that his natural state is over here. So just because I moved him over here, I haven't changed his natural state. I've just changed where he's located currently. So if I export him, when I try him out in the game, he's going to be over here instead of being center. Same thing with scale. If I make him really, really, really big, and I freeze all transforms, there, it thinks this is his natural size. So if I shrink him down and export him, he's gonna be gigantic. So if you have any problems with your model where it's way too big, way too small, or it's rotated funny, or it's in the wrong position on your map, what you have to do is most likely is you forgot to freeze your model before you exported it. So again, I'm going to line it up the way I want it. This feels like the right size, and I don't really have anything to, I guess, compare it to. So size is something we'll talk on later. So I have it there. He's in the center. He's rotated. He's standing straight up. But as you can see, the transforms aren't set to their natural state. So I need to go freeze all transforms. There we go. It should look like this: 1, 1, 1, and then 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So once it looks like that, it means it's frozen. It's in its natural state. So when we export it, it's going to stay the way it is right now. Okay, so let's actually get to the exporting. Go to Valve Source and export SMD. It's right at the top. This is the one we're going to want. We have multiple different things we can export when we export a model. The most common one is the model.smd. This is basically the model file type. It contains all the necessary data for the model. It contains all the information about where the it contains all the information about the shape of the polygons, where they're located. It contains all the texture information. It contains bone information for like if you want to animate later, if your character is a ragdoll or has animations and needs to have a skeleton so that it can animate. It'll have that. It'll have the bone information. It'll have, like I said, the geometry information. It has texture information. It has all the basic stuff, and that's every model needs this basically. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna choose where to export it, and I have a favorites here. Model source. Okay. We kept our textures inside the material source folder inside source SDK content. Now we're finally going to use our model source folder. Go up again, just once again, the Holy Trinity. It's map source, where we save our map files for Hammer. Material source, where we save our materials, or our texture files, like .tgas and .psds for textures. And model source. This is where we're going to save our model textures. So there we are, model source. Create a folder. It's usually good to name it after whatever, name it whatever. Right now I'm going to save it into modding camp. I already tested this out before. I'm going to save it as projectionator.smd. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And it already exists, so it's going to ask me to confirm, say yes. These checkboxes down here, these have to do with animation. You shouldn't really have to check any of these. These have to do with how it handles bones in character rigging. So that's more advanced and has to do with, again, 3D animation. So we're not going to mess with those. Don't touch those. Just leave it as model, and there we go. So before we go ahead and finish the export, I'm going to go ahead and just show you what some of these other ones are. There's model, and then there's fizzbox, which we'll use this when we start creating collision models for our model. What that means is, right now, if we export this, the character will be able to walk through it like it's not there, like it's an illusion. I explained how the model, the very first top one, how it contains all the necessary information. Let me revise it. It contains all the necessary information for rendering the object. This contains all the visual information, as well as skeletal animation, like information. But again, this model won't be solid when we put it in the game. What we need to do is we need to create what's called a collision model. When we create a collision model in a later lesson, we will be exporting it as a fizzbox. Later in another advanced lesson, when we go over animations, 3D animation, you'll want to export skeletal animation. So this won't actually export any of the geometry or the bones. It'll just export all the information about the animation itself. And then last but not least, vertex animation. I haven't really used this too much, but what this has to do is it has to do with animating individual points on your model. A good example of this is used for facial animation and lip syncing. So if you want to give your model lip syncing and expression so that you can use it like Face Poser in Gary's mod, or have it speak, or have facial animations, vertex animation is what will export those. But again, for right now, we're just going to stick with model, which is the simplest of all. And it's the core of all models. We need this. It's necessary. So we go ahead and we click OK, and boom, there we go. You might see a little progress bar. This is a very simple model, so it didn't take very long. It's finished already. And there we go. So now we're going to open up. Let's go to our desktop here. Okay. We have our tools here. We have Game Tools and Source SDK content. We're going to open that up. And now, like with textures, when we compiled the texture, we weren't done. We just because it's saved as a .smd, we aren't finished yet. So we need to go to Material Source, and we need to find the file that we exported, the .smd file. So I'm going to go to Modding Camp. Oh wait, no, this is a Material Source. Sorry, Source SDK Model Source. Modding Camp, and here we are, projectionator.smd. So that's the file that was exported by Softimage. This is what's called a QC file. Kind of like how VTF's files for textures can't work by themselves, they need a .vmt file to work as well. After you have an SMD file, you also need to create what's called a QC file to go along with it. It's almost just like making a .vmt. So if you're comfortable with making .vmt files for textures, you should be right at home with QC. The QC file doesn't exist initially. I made this one ahead of time. What you should do is you should go to Model Source, and or go to source SDK content, and you should find a model to just start with. Again, like Half-Life 2, you can go to model source. Let's do weapons V357, and here we are, V357 QC. So this, we open it up, and here we are. We have a QC file that we can start off with. But this is a more complex one. This one has animations and crap like that. Here, I'll just provide a very simple QC file that you'll need for your first model in the video description below. So again, here we are. You create a new notepad file, and here's how you create it. You need to create all your key values here. You need to start with a $, kind of like in .vmt. Again, just go to the video description. I'll have this laid out for you in sort of a template, so you can just make your own. So you start off with a blank notepad, and you paste the template in here, and now you'll need to change it accordingly. The model name, whatever you have here, this will be the actual model that it creates. We're going to compile our model later, or in a few seconds here, or a few minutes, and when that compiles, this is going to tell it where it's going to save the model file. So I'm going to have it save inside modding camp, the projectionator.mbl. So what's going to happen is when we compile this map, it's going to go to the TF2 files, and inside TF2, it's going to create a file, or wait, no, actually we have to do this ourselves. I'll go into that in a second. Inside the model folder for TF2, there's going to be a folder called modding camp, and inside that folder there's going to be the projectionator, and it's going to create several files which are going to be used for the model. And when we go into Hammer and we go to create a prop static, or a static prop, and we want to we go to the model browser and we try to select it so we can use it. This is the name we're going to look for, the projectionator. Now the next one is the CD materials. This tells the model where it's going to find its materials. It doesn't know where its textures are. So what you're going to do is you need to point it to the folder. Right now, the textures that I used two of them, called the projectionator, and the other one was called Mohawk. So I need to tell it those two textures are inside. They're inside the modding camp folder in my materials. So you're going to need to tell it what folder its materials are going to be in. This right here, static prop, this isn't mandatory. This just makes it so that it runs. It makes it more optimized and makes it more efficient in game. So if you have this here, static prop, in your QC file, it basically just makes your model more efficient. If your model's going to have, if your model's going to move around, or if your model's going to be animated, you don't want this. This will break it. So only have this here if you're going to have it stand still and just be for decoration. Next, scale. Oh yeah, also all the way, by the way, everything here that has these double slashes in front of it, those are called comments. Those are just there for your own personal notes. These, if they have two slashes in front of them, they don't, when you compile your file, these aren't considered. These are left out. So just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and remove these. Like I said, these aren't mandatory. These are just for common notes. So if you want to, like right here, you can go // and leave yourself a note saying, when I animate this model, remove this line. So there. So now you know that you left yourself a note, so that you'll know in the future that if I ever animate this model, that I'll have to remember to remove the static prop line, or else it'll break. So again, we don't need comments, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to erase it. You don't need, there you go. You don't need these spaces in between them. You could have them all lined up just like that. But just for the sake of keeping things organized, I'm going to put a space in between them so we don't get, so it doesn't look so cluttered. There we go. So again, model name, this is where it'll save the model file when we compile it. CD materials, this is where the model will find its textures that we have. And then static prop. We don't need that. That again just makes things more efficient. And then scale 1. Basically, this is a quick way to change the size of the model. If we go ahead and we put it in Hammer and we realize it's too small, we can make the scale bigger. So if we change scale to 2, it'll be twice as big. Scale 5, it'll be 5 times as big. If we do scale 0.5, it'll be half as big. So this is a quick way to change the size of things without having to go back in the soft image and having to export it constantly. You can just change the scale so that way it fits to what you need. Now this one, Body Studio, this is going to this tells the compiler what the main geometry of your model is going to be. Like when your models start having animations and stuff like that, you're going to have different lines for animations. And also later on when we have a collision model, you're going to need to tell it what SMD file is the collision model. So right now, Body Studio, we just want to tell it this is the basic shape. Like you'll notice most times a lot of characters, official characters from video games will be standing in what's called a T-pose, where they're standing straight out and they have their arms out straight. That's called the T-pose. Basically, this Body Studio line that we're looking at, you want to tell it which .smd file is the T-pose. What is its natural state? And then from there, you start telling it other files, like animation, collision, stuff like that. And those animations and collisions, those modify this base file right here, projector. So again, we only have one, projectinator.smd. You don't need the .smd used in it all the time, so just put the name of the file, projectinator. This /, basically that's just a shortcut way of saying it's in the same location as the QC file. And then sequence. Whenever you see this, this means that this is defining an animation. Now, this isn't animated, but every model needs to have an animation, even if it's not animated. So that sounds a little contradictory, but don't worry. All you have to do is just type in, just give it the same file name, projectinator. And there you go. The projectinator doesn't have any animation, but that's okay. It's just going to stand there. It just needs to have something. If it doesn't have an animation, it's not going to compile correctly. So anyway, it's set to loop and frames per second. I believe the lower frames per second, the more efficient it is. So since this isn't going to move at all, we're just going to make frames per second 1. So that way it takes up less memory in the computer. So later on, when we do have animated models, the more frames per second, such as like 30 or 60, will make the animation look better. It'll be a lot smoother, or a lot more smooth, but it'll take more memory and it'll be more costly on the computer. But since this isn't moving, we're just going to set it frames per second 1. We're going to save. Okay, so again, just bear with me. We're going to go over a quick recap. Model name chooses where the models or where the file is going to be saved when we compile. Seeded material shows it where the texture or where the model is going to find its textures in the game. Static prop is only used if it's actually going to be a static prop. Scale 1, it scales the object from its natural size. Body Studio, this is going to be the base file. This is the base.smd file that's going to use to define the model. And then sequence. This is a necessary animation. Okay, so we're all set. We're going to go ahead, file, save that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a shortcut for what's called Studio Model. You can find that inside your... Here, let me open up another folder here. You can find that inside your program files x86, Steam apps. Where is it? Yeah, CyberSticky, Source SDK content. Source SDK content. No, actually not content, sorry. CyberSticky and then Source SDK. Bin. It's in the same place that we found VTEX. So again, that's CyberSticky, or your username, whatever that is. Source SDK. Bin. Orange box. And then bin again. It's buried deep in there. Again, username, Source SDK, bin, orange box, bin. You go down, and there it is, Studio Model. This is what will compile our QC files. Again, right click, and then you'll do send to desktop or create shortcut, and then from there you can place it inside your game tools. So there we are, we have our shortcut. So now we get the QC file, make sure it's in the same folder as your .smd. So now we click and drag projectionator onto studio model, and we release. Now really quick, a console window will appear. It appeared on my other monitor, so you didn't get to see it. But a DOS window will show up, and it'll quickly do a bunch of stuff really fast, and it'll close before you can see it. In a later episode, I'll show you how you can create what are they called? Batch files. So that way you can tell it to pause before it finishes. So that way if there was an error, you can check and make sure that it didn't quit out and it closes too quickly. So if there was an error and your model didn't compile correctly, you won't know because it closed so fast. But anyway, there's a way to do that. Again, I don't really have it off the top of my head, so that'll be for a later lesson. So there you are. Once it's done, we can go ahead and check to see if it actually worked. I'll open up my TF2 files and go to models. And oh yeah, here's something else too. When we created textures, it was really nice because when we compiled our textures, like let's say if we created a texture and we put it inside the modding camp folder, if that modding camp folder didn't exist yet inside materials, it would create that folder for us. Unfortunately, when compiling models, it doesn't do that. I don't know why, but anyway, if you don't create your folder that the model is going to be compiled to ahead of time, it'll give you an error. It won't compile correctly. So again, just to sort of review, let's see here, models. There we go. Nope. Okay. Inside this QC file, we saw here that it's going to compile to the folder modding camp, and it's going to save it as the projectionator. So again, if we didn't have this folder created, modding camp, when we compiled it, it wouldn't have worked. So again, just before you go ahead and compile, make sure that you have that the folder does exist. And then once you compile, here we are. You'll see 5 different files, all with the same name. You'll need all of these files in here for it to work. But anyway, now that they're here, the model should work in Hammer and in turn inside in the game. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to open up Source SDK, already have it open, and I'm going to open up Hammer Editor. Okay, go File, and open up our first map. And here we are. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a prop static. Click on the entity. Let's go ahead, search prop static. There we go. Let's click somewhere on the ground. Again, when you click on it in the 3D view, you need to actually position it down a bit. It doesn't automatically go to the ground. You need to move it down a little. There we go. So now it's lined up with the floor. Let's do Alt-Enter to open up its property page. Here we are. World model. We're going to browse. And here we are. We do a search filter for and there we are. We can already see it, the projectionator.mdl inside the modding camp folder. Click on that. Haha, there we go. Look at him. So there he is in the model viewer. Let's double click. And let's click apply. And voila, beautiful. He's in the game. But he's facing the wrong way, so let's rotate him a little bit. There we go. And let's see. Oh, he looks actually kind of small. So let's go ahead. Let's change that. Let's open up the QC file again. Modding camp, projectionator. And we can do scale. Let's scale him 1.5. Save. And then we just recompile it again. And sometimes Hammer will update automatically. Like, let's see here. There he is. Let me go ahead and open up these 2 folders here. So now when I go ahead and recompile, you might see the effects right away in Hammer. So there we are. It's compiled already. We click on Hammer. Whoa, boom. We saw his box get a little bit bigger, but he disappeared. Let's save, and let's just quit Hammer. Let's just open up Hammer again. It's loading. Okay, file, first map. There we go. There he is. That's a little bit bigger. He looks about to be the same height as the character, just about. Yeah, that looks nice. Alright, so we'll keep him there. And now, something has changed recently. Gary's mod has become Steam piped, which is Valve's new way of doing, I guess, file organization, file structure. Now, before, I originally, in a previous lesson, I had told you how to make it so that your hammer will export or compile maps into your Gary's mod folder. Well, since it's changed, let's see here. It used to be program files, Steam apps. Okay, anyway, here we are. It used to be in CyberSticky or your username, Gary's mod maps. Anyway, it's not saved there anymore because that's no longer the Gary's mod directory. You see now it says Gary's mod _old. So we don't want to use this anymore. The new location is inside common, not your username. Common, Gary's mod, and then maps. There. So now that you have that set, when you compile a map, it'll now be saved in the correct directory so that it'll compile correctly and you can actually see it in game. So there we are, we have our guy there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to compile our map with him in it. Just going to do fast, no need to run super detailed lighting or anything. It's just for a test. Alright, finished compiling. There's the compile window. All done. So now I want to do this in Gary's mod. So I'm going to have to drag the files into the Gary's mod folder. Again, this is maybe I'm going to do this just to show you that let's see, we have our TF2 files here. And now let me close out of all these. We don't need all these open. And here's my Gary's mod. Right now it's my Gary's mod shortcut. I haven't updated this. This one still takes me to my old Gary's mod. So I'm going to need to create a new shortcut eventually that points to the common one, the new one. Gary's mod. Here we are. So now from here you'd go into TF2. Here's your TF files. There's the models, modding camp. This is where your models files are saved. So you just drag and drop the modding camp. Whoops, can't really see what's going on there. You just drag and drop the modding camp folder that has the model files into the models folder in Gary's mod. I've already done this, so I'm just going to have it overwrite. There we go, and yeah, and then you do the same with your textures. I already have the textures set up, and you put your materials inside the materials, modding camp. And see, we have Mohawk already in the projectionator. So now that Gary's mod has the necessary files, let's run it. Alright, one moment while we get this started. Okay, so here we are. We got Gary's mod running. One moment. Okay, here we are. So let's start new game. Other. First map. Alright, here we are, and we can already see him. There he is. There's that handsome devil. Alright. So yeah, we can walk all the way around him. We saw him just like he was in soft image. He's got nice lighting on him, as he's a static prop. Again, static props take lighting from the map. So, same as our truck here. So yeah, as you can see, we can walk around him. Looks good, but as again, he's not solid, so we can walk through him, illuminate him, do all that sort of thing. We can create some dynamic lights. He's affected by that. Oh, it should be. Yeah, the truck's illuminated, but maybe it's because he doesn't have a collision model. In any case, he's not being illuminated correctly. Whatever. So, anyway, we'll look into that later. So there we are. We got our very own model. If you want to spawn it inside Gary's mod, what you do is you'd hold down Q, browse, and you just do games, and I believe Gary's mod, and then here you go. Now you have all your folders. So we'll go down to modding camp, I believe should be here. I don't see it. Let's see. Oh wait, there it is up at the top. It's just not alphabetical for some reason. There we are, modding camp. Now we have our model here. Spawn them, and there we are. Now we can move them all around. Take them outside. Take them out back and shoot them, says Saber. So yeah, there we are. So that's how you take a model from last week. We discussed how to modeling basics, and then today we went over the basics of texturing to give your model a texture, and then the brief overview or brief walkthrough of how to export and put your model in the game. So yeah, I can't wait to see what all of you make. I hope this was insightful. Again, I tried explaining everything as best I could. I understand it's very complicated. This took me a very long time to learn, and I took over it, or I did all of it in a very short amount of time. It's not even been 2 hours yet. So again, this was a lot to cover in 2 hours. Again, this is on YouTube. I know we only have like 1 or 2 people who stopped in to view the live stream, so this is probably just going to be for YouTube viewers. Again, I will try and create timestamps when I can, and yeah, you'll be able to go back, review some of the more complicated things, watch it a couple times, make sure you absorb everything. And again, the best thing is just practice, practice, practice. Just get in there, get your hands dirty, mess around. Your things aren't going to look pretty at first. You're going to get frustrated, but just stay calm. There's lots of really good online in-depth tutorials, and again, Soft Image has a very good user's guide, which should give you a lot of technical details, and also just kind of, if you really want to learn how things work, that's the best place to look. And once you learn that, you can it's a lot easier to understand everything. But these have been the basics, and again, just trying to teach you everything you need to get your first models in the game. So yeah, now that you know how to model, you can decorate your levels, really give them personalized feelings. You can make your own maps, you can make your own textures, you can make your own models. This basically concludes the major crash course of the modding camp. I think all the lessons after today's will be more just kind of in-depth, kind of advanced topics, things that'll save you time, things that'll help the map be more efficient. But as far as the bare building blocks go, this is it. You've got everything you need. So again, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go ahead. Whoa, quit out of here. Yeah, that's it. That's it for today's lesson. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, in the comments, if you have any more work, if you have any successful exported models into the game, take screenshots. I'd love to see them. And in the meantime, I guess I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.